Hello everybody, thank you for watching this video. It is going to be about reviewing the past and, to a certain degree, new vampire cards coming out the next set. This is hopefully meant to be kind of a good refresher or introduction for people who might not be used to the old vampire cards and what old cards might be of good support for the new vampire cards. So yeah, let's get into the ranking system, which will kind of be there's not a lot of slides this video, but the ranking system kind of will just go with each individual slide. I'm not going to go over literally every single card for each individual slide. They'll kind of be like bundles of cards in a slide that kind of all fit the rank slash category that they're meant for. So the ranking is not too much different than what it is for a set review. It's just kind of slightly adjusted to be in regards to a vampire deck. Just kind of shifting the lens from like a general like set review down to just kind of scoping down into just vampires. So again, I'm just going to kind of go down the list real quick. But 5 is like a meta-defining or meta-warping card needed for the deck to function. 4 is a strong, solid card needed for vampires. 3 is an average strength card and is still usually used for vampires. In general, it's just still a good enough card, and there's no alternative cards to replace it. 2 is it's a good card, but may not be run for the vampire deck. And 1 is it's rarely used, is niche, and in this case for the slides, it's also a budget option in case either you can't afford better cards or the cards are just really scarce in nature to find. And 0 is not going to be mentioned in this, but basically with a few exception cards such as like Rule and Eye, Omen of Silence, or like Wings of Lust, other cards are generally 0, either because they just don't fit with the deck well, or because they are just so scarce right now that you'd be kind of paying out the wazoo to even have it. And even then, it's not like a core card to the deck. That being said, too, I do want to mention, by all means, feel free to experiment with, the deck, try different things. I am all for trying weird, kooky things. God knows I have. So if I don't mention a card, or I may have, like, let's say, less than favorable opinion about it, I'm not saying like don't give it a shot, but just either through my own testing or just kind of just general knowledge of Abyss Craft, it just either may not work as well, or there just might be better options instead that just kind of push a card out of being a option. First up are the strong slash core cards. These are basically the rank 4/5 cards that I would say are basically needed for the deck. There is one maybe slight exception with Kudlak, because a lot of the decks I've seen either just run 1 or 2 copies, but regardless, they still seem to run him regardless. I think he's just so late game though that people don't want to get their hands clogged up with a couple Kudlaks early on, and then they're just literally useless till the end of the game. But starting off, we got Vanya, Nightshade Vampire, her Evo, Kind Queen Vanya, and Blood Queen Vanya. The set 2 Vanya Vampire Princess. I do have mainly the older cards in as pictures as a reminder slash reference, mainly because I'm sure people are going to be looking at the new cards and have that fresh in their memory. So the cards here are just kind of the older ones. So you got Vanya Vampire Princess, Gift for Blood King, Old Blood King, good new cards. Unleash the Nightmare, you get 3 force bats and you draw 2, and it's 1 less if you do have a vampire card on the field. And it's vampire card, not vampire follower or forced bat. It is vampire card, so things like Vampire Fortress do count towards Unleash the Nightmare and being 1 less. Like I mentioned already, kind of out of order, but whatever. It's Kudlak. Usually run as like a 1 or 2. 2 seems to be about the sweet happy middle area, but I have seen like one or two deck lists where he's just run as one copy. Next is a non-vampire card, but it seems to be run in practically every deck because there are so many one-cost followers, and that's Last Daylight and Sweet Sentiments. It's the same card. One's just a promo of the other, but they both do the exact same thing. And in general, between the two, you can only have up to 3 copies in case there's any new people and don't know how that works. If you notice on the Sweet Sentiments card, Last Daylight says, Last Daylight is referenced in Sweet Sentiments, which just basically means it is the same card. Deck building wise. So I wish it'd be funny to run 3 copies of each, but that's just not legal. You got I put 2 of the 3 ravens in here. The next raven is on the next slide, and I'll kind of get into that in the next one. And then I just kind of threw the force bat in here just as a friendly reminder for people of just what force bat is. It's just a basic one cost 1/1 token that just almost everything kind of references in some way, shape, or form, or if they don't reference it, they just reference vampire. So if you look at any basic deck list, all of these are going to be run at usually max of 3, with, like I said, the exception of being Kudlak. So yeah, nothing too crazy here, I feel like. But yeah, moving on to kind of the next one is the good/solid cards, and there's not a lot of them here. I kind of go down the list, but Raven, Midnight Vampire, the only reason why I kind of put her down here instead of up in the previous is because first, the 1 damage, it's only 1 damage per turn. So even if you could somehow spam out multiple bats in a turn, you're still only going to burn your opponent for 1. The 1 damage is usually not that big of a deal and not game ending, or that, generally speaking, impactful. I'm sure there's a lot of games that someone's not just hanging on by the thread of 1 life, and even then there's the other Raven that you can tap to, deal to, and burn to. So the Midnight Vampire variant just seems kind of redundant and not as strong. Most decks, and I will just clarify, most decks still run her, but if you are trying to free up a little bit of space because you want a little bit of something else, I would just say she is the weakest. And also, before I forget, she does have 1 defense as well, so people are going to probably commonly run Angelic Barrage, and so she's going to get hit pretty easily, where at least the Healing Raven, I just can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, the 3 of them escape me as far as which is which, but the Heal Raven, yes, it's only 1 life, but it is also that she has 2 defense, so she can survive an Angelic Barrage. So she's just kind of the weakest, and the 2-cost Raven, that's a 1/1, yes, it's a 1, but her effect is very not only flexible as far as if you want to heal to and deal to, and draw a card, or deal damage to a follower and draw a card, but just the draw engine in itself, even though she's a 1 defense, is just really good for cycling cards. So she herself just kind of warrants staying in the deck. But outside of Raven, Midnight Vampire, Vampire Fortress, really good consistency card. It's a 1-cost amulet that on Fanfare, you check the top 3 cards, and you can put a vampire card. So that also is an implicit acceptance for Vampire Fortress itself. So you can grab another copy of Vampire Fortress, or Vampire Fortress, and then the other 2 go to the bottom of the deck, and for 1, and you can tap and sacrifice the amulet to summon a forest bat. So it's basically just you pay 1 for a forest bat, and you just replace the fortress. So very good early game consistency card to just get forest bats out in general. More likely than not, it's just going to be run in a deck. Usually I've seen it at either like a 2 or 3 amount if it is run. Next is Summon Bloodkin, which I usually see at a quantity of 3. Pretty straightforward card. Summon a Force Bat, and you put another Force Bat in the EX area. So it's kind of like a, I hate to call it a draw, but it's kind of, add an extra card to hand, but it's just going in the EX area. So really good card for easily summoning bats for the now and future turns. Last is Precious Bloodfangs, another really solid card that kind of gives you flexibility on what you want. The summon X Force Bat tokens is X equal amount to the number of enemy cards on the field, so that includes followers and amulets. So things like stacking with Dirt Rune with their stacks, if they do for some reason keep multiple amulets on the board. That's kind of on them, and the fact that you just get to get more bats. Or you can give all your force bats +1/+1, which is actually really good because that gets around them being just completely destroyed by Angelic Barrage. So a lot of good flexibility. It is also the deck also runs Crimson Rose Queen in, I would say, most decks. I'd say probably like 75% of the decks I've seen. I think as the meta kind of developed, people kind of did lean more into Crimson Rose Queen as an alternative win con. So with it being a 2-cost card, does help in that regards as well. Speaking of Crimson Rose Queen, this is the category I kind of put her in as more of like a niche card. And I say niche not because she's bad. She's actually kind of, in my mind, a weird place to put her because she is very strong. But she is usually only run as like 2 copies with 2 Evo as a, kind of top end finisher. I mean, she is 6 cost and cost 2 to Evo. So she is a late game card. You tend to not want to run, 3 copies of her, and the deck does have a lot of draw power, so it's not unreasonable to see her pretty late game at like when you would need her. But I put her under niche because depending on how you kind of want to build the deck, it is an option that you can take out. But I would say this Crimson Rose Queen is almost, I would arguably say, a staple, at least competitively. If you're kind of going for more of like a vampire only theme deck, yeah, you can probably cut her, if you're kind of having more fun with her. But yeah, this one I might hear some people be like, why is she, a niche / rank 2? And so I understand that she is good. Don't get me wrong. So don't flame me too hard here. But like, she's not, as far as like the core function of a vampire deck. She doesn't do vampire things. So I just kind of naturally put her down a little bit. And there are ways to build the deck just without her. So just I understand competitively, very good. I get it. But anyways, moving on to other ones. You got Night Horde. It's a 3-cost spell that summons 2 force bats, and then you deal damage to a follower to the equal to the number of force bat tokens on the field. And just keep in mind that is the tokens themselves, not vampires. So not as maybe strong as I kind of wished or hope it would be, but there are some decks that might run like 2 copies as an alternative way to just deal some damage to enemies. Another option that I've seen, I'd probably say roughly 50% of the time, is Do Blame Duke and Dame. Real good early game and decent late game card where it's a 2-cost 2/2. You pay 1 to Evo, or on Fanfare you bury a card, you just mill a card. You Evo it for 1, and on Evolve you deal 2 to an enemy follower. But if you're Necrocharge 10 or more, you deal 4 instead. So just a good early and late game card. I'm trying to think of, usually the most like kind of best decks I've seen is at the very least like 3 Vanyas, 3 Old Blood Kings, like 2 Crimson Rose Queens if you run her, and then the last 2 is kind of up in the air. Usually like with Do Blame, or I've also seen it with Vate, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, kind of that last Evo spot. And I've seen some decks too, like competitive decks, that just literally don't even have like something else. It is just like 2 Crimson Rose Queens, 3 Old Blood Kings, and 3 Vanya Evos, and the other 2 are just, they just don't matter. So it's a very weird deck in that regards, but there is, I feel like, enough probably space in the deck that if you want to kind of get an Evo card in there, you can. And Do Blame is a solid option. Like I mentioned, Vate, Vampire Noble, 2-cost, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, 2-cost 2/2. His on strike is summon a bat. You Evo him for 1 into a 3/3. He still keeps the on strike summon a bat, but on Evo you do get a bat in the EX area. I was watching some of the competitive Shadowverse games, and they did mention, one of the competitors did mention that Vate was like his ace, so I don't want to discount Vate as a good option for the deck. Arcus Spirited Manager, kind of went over it on the Abysscraft set review. But in general, it's just a good, solid, solid static card that's like a pseudo amulet, 2 cost 5/5. A Necrocharge 10, you do get to summon 1 ghost onto your board. at the start of your main phase, and then you can sack a follower. It doesn't have to be the ghost, but you can sacrifice a follower at axe speed to either draw a card, mill two, or trying to remember what the last one was. Oh my goodness. Um, Draw a card, mill two, or I can't remember what the last effect is, but they're all pretty good flexible effects that you know I've seen different decks run. Let's see, I mentioned Crimson Rose Queen, Whispers of a Dream, really good tech card. Especially if you're in a more competitive environment, because Dirt Ruin is very popular, and between like Riley and Ancient Alchemist, they're both 3 costs that can cost a lot to either Evo in the case of Ancient Alchemist, or to resurrect back with Riley. Ancient Alchemist is a 3 cost that evolves for 3, so you're investing 6 there, and Whispers can pop it for 2. Along with the Necrocharge Mill, with getting more vampires in the cemetery, or Riley is a 3 cost, but in order to res her from the cemetery, you got to pay 6. So really good, just tech card there in general. All right, and the last section we'll be talking about is the kind of budget slash scarcity cards. I'm going to avoid some cards. I'm just going to kind of go over the note here first before I get into it. But things like Rule and I, Omen of Silence, or Wings of Lust, I'm not including in this list because, yes, they are good cards, but they are either really expensive right now, or they're kind of low in quantity. And I'm thinking more of Wings of Lust with that one, because at one point Wings of Lust was a pretty good, solid, generic card. So things like that I'm going to try to avoid. I'll try to kind of focus more on the cheaper, although they may not be like the cheapest, but cheaper, at least more readily available option cards. So starting with Soul Conversion, it's just a 1 cost quick spell that lets you destroy a follower on your field to draw 2. So really good to just, maybe swing with a bat, kill it, and draw 2, or summon a bat and then kill it and draw 2. So just another alternative draw option. Unleash the Nightmare is not a scarce card as far as I'm aware, but just in case you want more draw or a little more consistency at the expense of some play points, you got Soul Conversion. Bahukaha, which I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, so sorry if I did get that wrong, but I usually just call her Bad Kathy. She's a 3 cost 2/3 that on Fanfare you choose one of her 3 effects. You can either give a different follower, so not her, but a different follower on the field, +1/+1. You can give your leader 2 life, or you check the top 3 cards of your deck, put any number of them on top, and put the remaining on the bottom. She can evolve for 2, so a little expensive, but she does get +2/+2 in stats, so slightly more justified. But on evolve, you can either choose to engage each enemy follower on the field, which if you're new to Shadowverse, engage just means turn them sideways, so they're more vulnerable to being attacked. You can deal 2 damage to each enemy leader, or put the top card of your deck into your EX area, which is essentially you draw the card that you wanted to put back, or if you returned all 3 to the bottom, it is a crapshoot draw of what you get. So pretty good flexible card. In general, she may be a little more on the expensive side, but if you're trying to look for like another Evo slot, either you're struggling to find Crimson Rose Queens, or you're trying to find just another alternative option for the 2 slots that I kind of mentioned that are kind of usually unused, you can go with Bad Kaha. Next is Cerberus, which is I'd say maybe less good option, but she's a 4 cost 3/3. Fanfare, you put a Mimi or Coco token into the EX area, and a Necro charge 10. Instead of one or the other, you choose both. Mimi lets you deal 2 damage to an enemy follower. Coco lets you add 2 attack to a follower of your choice. So really good as far as if you're trying to buff, you board spam force bats pretty frequently, so the opponent might not be able to clear out every single follower in a turn. So then you can kind of come around with Cerberus and kind of buff a few followers with +2 attack. On Evo, the Evo is 2, but again she also gets +2/+2 in stats, so she goes from a 3/3 to a 5/5. But you do get a Mimi and Coco into the EX area. So again, more damage, more buffing. This is more of a, generally speaking, I don't know how much I would really lean into her. She is pretty expensive for a turn. I mean, she does cost 6, At that point, I mean, you'd probably want to do something like summon, Vanya and Evo her for 3 and swing for 6 to face. Um, she kind of does the same thing but better, especially if you can just play force bats for free and deal 3 damage. Like, that's just, again, more stats than just Mimi will deal 2 follower. So not the best option, but again, these are budget choices, so I wouldn't go to these initially for building the deck. Yuzuki, Righteous Demon, good 6 cost 5/5 follower that fanfare. Your opponent selects a card on their field and banishes it, or puts it to the cemetery. And Necrocharge 10, your opponent puts 2 followers on their board to the cemetery. So it gets around aura. If your opponent has things like Heavenly Aegis on the board that says, like, has an aura, and it says like your opponent can't, I believe it's like can't deal effect damage to it. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it says slightly more protection to it. Yuzuki gets around that. Yuzuki also has an axe skill that costs 3 play points, and you discard her and you mill 1 and you deal 5 damage to an enemy follower. Like I said, just another alternative decent option if you're just trying to like fill the deck, but I wouldn't say Yuzuki is a viable all the time card for the deck. Next is Wardrobe Raider, which is from set 1, pretty old card, but not bad, honestly. I'm kind of surprised, but it's a 3 cost 3/3 Evo's for free, which is very unique for Shadowverse in general, but especially for Abysscraft. I think she's the only one that does that. And on Evolve, you put a follower on your field into the cemetery, and then you destroy an enemy follower on the field. So for 3, and ideally you're going to want to just sacrifice a bat, because who cares about the bats? They're essentially like another form of resource in this game anyways. Not a bad option if you're trying to fill up a Evo slot. Your opponent might have some big dudes that you can just be like, cool, I sack a bat, you lose Ancient Alchemist, you lose Riley, like it's just really nice. Just doesn't get around aura, essentially. Next is Rookie Succubus. It's a 2 cost 1/1, and its effects are on Fanfare and on Last Word, you summon a Force Bat. So she herself is nothing super special, but at least you do get a Force Bat. She does synergize well with soul Conversion. You can play her, get the Force Bat, kill her with Soul Conversion, get another Force Bat. So if you have cards that give Force Bat buffs on summon or something, there you go. And last, as like a maybe another kind of Storm finisher card, is Alucard. If I'd say maybe he's more of like if you can't get Crimson Rose Queens or other big finishers in the deck, you can run him. He can potentially do up to 6 damage. What's unfortunate about him though is, and he does have Storm and a Necrocharge 10, he does get the +2, so that makes him 6. He does give a little bit of sustain with his strike effect. I guess before I get into the analysis, but just to finish him off, with the strike effect, you deal 4 damage to an enemy follower and you heal 4. What is unfortunate is if they don't have an enemy follower on the field, or a follower that you can choose that has aura, for example, you don't get the 4 life. So it's all or nothing. You got to deal damage in order to heal with Alucard. The one thing that I will mention that is kind of unfortunate with him is he is a 7 cost. So things like Kudlak can't grab him, because Kudlak only grabs 6 costs or less followers. So that is a little unfortunate, but for what it's worth as well, you can grab him with Vampiric Fortress. So, if it's like late game, you got like 8+ play points and you pull a Vampiric Fortress, you can play it. Hope the next 3 is an Alucard to maybe you can finish the game off there, because at that point you're probably at Necrocharge 10. So there is some viable options with him as a thought, especially because he is a vampire that does help him to a greater degree than other cards and finishers. But again, in general, probably not going to run him. But again, this is just kind of budget scarcity options. So. And finally, here's a good starting deck list to start from when building your deck. I think this is pretty solid overall, so I don't know of any real changes I would make to it, but everyone's a little different, kind of gets different vibes, different feels. Their metas might be a little different at their locals. But as far as if you took this to like a regionals, I'd say this is pretty solid. You got 3 of both copies of Vanya, 2 Do Blame, which could arguably be taken out, I suppose, if you needed some space. Like I said, there's some decks I've seen that just literally have such few Evo cards in general, and don't even run Do Blame. You got Old Blood King at 3, the Unleash the Nightmare draw spell at 3, Kudlak for 2 because you don't want to see them, early on. You got 3 of the Raven that heals, 3 of the Raven that you can tap to either heal or deal damage. You got 2 Vampiric Fortresses for consistency, 3 Summon Bloodkin to get some bats out, 3 Precious Bloodfangs for some more stat buffs or bats. You got a couple Whispers to deal with big threats this meta that are still 3 costs. 3 Gift for Bloodkin for the for great vampires and draw, and still synergize as well with Crimson Rose Queen along with Precious Bloodfangs and Whispers, and then Last Daylight, which still synergizes with Crimson Rose Queen to help buff up your 1-cost followers, including bats, in case that wasn't obvious enough. And then for the Evo deck, you got 3 of the 2-sided Vanya Evo. You got 3 Old Blood Kings, 2 Do Blame, and 2 Crimson Rose Queen. But it is, like I mentioned before, not a surprise if the 2 Do Blames are just not even in the deck. So sometimes you really only will have actually 8 valid Evo cards to choose from. And that's about it. If you think I missed any kind of cards that might be good for the deck, or anything, give me your thoughts or opinions down below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace.